what we're looking to avoid, how the plant extracts, things like that. So, as I said, the Douglas fir resin, what you look at there is you have this long-chain sugar component to the resin that makes it all sticky and stuff, and that slows down our extraction of the essential oils that we're actually looking for. So it takes longer, quite simply. But certain things like the Tulsi, for instance, once that goes in, because the hawthorn, we actually ferment it like a red. So the hawthorn berries go in the primary, you're punching it down for the first 4 days to make sure the cap stays nice and wet. You're fermenting it hot to get the phenolics out. And then once that finishes, or gets very close to, is when we add the Tulsi, because we only really want that holy basil on there for usually about 3 days, maybe 5 if it's pretty cold in the meadery, because we're looking for really the lighter, more volatile molecules there. And so once we get those, we transfer it, and we get that out of there. But generally speaking, lavender being an exception, Tulsi being an exception, they're going to be about a week-ish. Mm-hmm. Some of that depends on temperature. Again, if it's colder, it'll kind of go more to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. If it's warmer, we still normally go a week, but sometimes 5 days. As far as, your chamomile or your lemon balm or your dry hops or the other additions that we do, it's usually about a week into stable wine so far. And a big piece of that is to maintain that flexibility that we enjoy with how we operate off of a base batch type of mentality. And part of it's just that's what we have found works the best for us.
Okay. Do you use a spice bag for your additions, or do you just float it in free?
So like the chamomile we do, the lemon balm we do use a hop strainer bag basically. The dry hops, obviously, we do that. It works. The rose petals, we actually found that we got a really poor extraction when we did that. So we don't do that anymore. We just let the rose petals be free, and we deal with the pain in the butt of having to get them out of there.
Actually, I found the same thing myself when I used Johnny Jump Ups, pansies.
Ooh!
Johnny Jump Ups.
Did you get a nice grapey flavor out of those things?
No, actually, you get a little bit of the licorice from the stems.
Oh, interesting.
Huh. Because that's not what I played with it. Our native violets are, just tiny, about the size of your pinky nail or something. I mean, they're just tiny. I haven't done anything with them yet. But I love the flavor. I eat them when I'm out walking around and stuff.
Yeah, they're so tasty.
Yeah, it's a licoricey flavor.
Yeah, but you have to watch how long you leave it, otherwise it gets kind of vegetable-y.
Okay. So, how long did you find you left it?
I'd have to check my notes. I'm not sure where I've left my brew book.
Now he's going to be emailing you, AJ. There you go.
That's fine. That's fine.
If you need her email, just let me know. I'll hand it over.
Yeah, I do. Obviously.
do. Yes. I have to look that up. I need an incentive to find my brew book. It's buried in a heap right now.
I gotta dig my old one out and finish translating all of my chicken scratchings into something I can read.
It's my wife's favorite joke. She's like, "You can't die because I will not be able to read what you were doing down there."
I've had to digitize everything for the same reasons, because I take care of all the household stuff around here, like, bills and whatnot. And my husband's like, "I don't even know what you do," and I'm like, "Just log into the bank. Everything's right there." Because if you had
I actually have an Excel spreadsheet with all the important stuff, because there's no way Mark could figure it out from my chicken scratch.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh God. I know, I need to get Michelle on that, because same thing. I mean, she does she's really, I joke, I'm the CFO, the Chief Fermenting Officer, and she's the CEO. She really is. I mean, she's the person organizing the bank accounts, the accounts receivable, payable, all that. Everything, as far as the actual financial lifeblood of this thing is her. And so, I'm like, you can't die here, because I couldn't file the paperwork. But it's the same thing. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff to remember. It's incredible.
So, from a prescriptivist kind of viewpoint, when does a hawthorn berry move from a metheglin or from a berry, which is a melomel, to a metheglin in your mind? What do you call it?
I mean, we competed with that in the fruit and spice mead.
Did you?
So I classified that as kind of a little bit of a melomel, a little bit of a metheglin.
Methomels is what I call them.
Yeah, there you go. It's a methomel. Honestly, what's hard is being a person that has had a lot of botany. You start realizing that, a cardamom hull is a fruit.
There's no real difference.
It's not a spice. It's actually a fruit.
It really is
right?
a fruit, yeah.
So I think that the line is extremely arbitrary. For me personally, when I look at it, I say, well, obviously, that hawthorn berry fits a lot of the definitions of an apple. And so I feel like it's a fruit.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like our elderberry, even though it's really not known as an edible, it's known as a medicinal, I still think it's a fruit. Because it fits.
Elderberry is
fleshy,
definitely a fruit. It tastes like grapes.
It's
a fruit.
Depends on the elderberry.
Yeah, it doesn't taste great, but definitely a fruit, right?
I'm pretty sure I had elderberry.
So yeah, that's kind of where I fall out on it, is that's a fruit and spice mead. It's an open category mead, basically. But really, nobody outside of, my 2.5-year-old and myself eats hawthorn to just eat it, right? People don't do that anymore. People use it if they have arrhythmias, or they use it if they need to increase the contractility and the stroke volume of their heart, or they use it when they need to help to balance plaques inside of the artery walls. They use it for a medicinal purpose. So it's a fruit, but more so a medicinal fruit, right? More of an herb type fruit as far as how we use it. So it's kind of that in between, unfortunately. Like, I don't know.
See, with your example there of elderberries taste like fruit, so I'd have to call it a melomel. In fact, it would get mistaken for a piment very easily. Does the hawthorn berry taste like a melomel?
Very much, yeah.
Okay.
So like I said, I mean, you bring cidery, banana-y, almost like some raspberry notes, and the nice crisp acidity that you usually see with fruit. So it just adds a lot of what fruit adds, basically. So I think that if we were to make that just as it was, it would be a melomel. That's
right.
What it would be, as opposed to a metheglin. So it's kind of a somewhat exception. When you look actually, though, like our sessions, peach, raspberry, elderberry, apple. I mean, we use a ton of fruit in our session meads, more to express the seasonality of the bluff here. So to kind of highlight what our orchards are producing right now. And we serve it in a form, at least up until this year, that was not stabilized at all. And so it's literally, you have 4 to 7 days to drink this. You have to have it fresh, and it's what's fresh on the bluff. We've gone this year to more pasteurized bottles for safety purposes, honestly. We had people that had growlers blowing up on them because they're putting them in their cupboard because they didn't know what to do with the mead. They're like, yeah, it's shelf stable, right? And so they put it up in their cupboard and it blow up. And so we've moved away from dispensing it fresh, basically. We've moved to a stabilized product. But, I mean, my peach, it's gone. There's no more of that. And there's not going to be more until next year. So we still operate off of a very seasonal round on our melomels. And they just happen to be at, 4 to 6% ABV.
Nice. Manny was asking, because his computer took a dump, so he's rebooting. But he asked if you'd be interested to share sort of a beginner's recipe of what you feel are a good combination of herbs, and so you got me doing it now, Hamish, and something easily found in grocery stores. So, things like holy basil, not commonly found at a grocery store, generally speaking, unless you're at like a really good grocery store.
Oh heavens, no.
Yeah.
No.
But it's something that you might find at a decent grocery store that a regular person who's not herb-wise might find, and something that you know would be a good mixture, because that's a big mystery to a lot.
I'll probably lean on those hybrids, honestly. I mean, because I think that that really one of the more pleasant things to do is to take a fruit that you're used to working with, right? Take pears, for instance, and then pair them up, pardon the pun, with something like ginger. That's a great pairing.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful way of working with it. So I think probably if people were delving in, that's exactly where I started. And then just kind of, when I started dating my wife and then, of course, marrying her, came into like 120 jars of herbs all of a sudden
that I
got to play with, right?
Yeah, I have a door full of shelves full of herbs. My husband's like, why do you have those? I'm like, because.
Yeah, but if you look, I mean, honestly, most good grocers are going to have Frontier Herbs stocked, right? And that's a company. They're two-part company. Frontier is the herb side, and then Articacia is the essential oil side. They're excellent. They do great sourcing. They're careful. Their products are safe. They're tested to be safe and free of adulteration. So theirs is a great place to start. And you'll see them, I mean, in our area, the Kroger stores have them. In the natural section, they just have a wall of spices, right?
Yeah.
So you can find coriander.
Yes.
You can find ginger. You can find fennel. You can find all these things. And good coriander. So for us, I've had a lot of fun kind of riffing off of a basic wit spice set, which is orange and coriander. Orange peel and coriander. Get a Belgian yeast from your friendly local homebrew store. And that's made really interesting sessions. And we've been able to take that and then layer, we'll roast some dandelion root. And we'll layer that over the top. Or we'll add some yarrow as our bitterness. Or we'll just put in some Saaz hops and make it just like a wit beer, only with honey, right? That's a nice accessible point, I think, for people that want kind of a carbonated light beverage. Obviously, you have some others. In our region, we have, like mint honeys that express this really deep, they're almost buckwheat honey color-wise, just this dark brown. And they have that subtle minty quality to them. And so with those, you could look at the cardamom, which again, you're gonna find. And you could potentially even build up with some warmer spices, like your cinnamons and nutmegs over the top.
Okay.
You just kind of have the cardamom and the mint play the cool side of the spectrum, have your clove and cinnamon play the warmer side of the spectrum, and then just search for that balance point, basically. But generally, I think that most people will have made some melomels. That's an accessible point. People know fruit. They like fruit. They make fruit-based meads. So just fold in an herb. So fold in the ginger with your pears. Like I said, we kind of I used a lot too much galangal in the orange that we did. We did, orange clove galangal.
Yeah, it's strong.
And it was good, just acrid. I mean, it was really spicy.
Yeah.
So obviously use a pretty light hand there. Beyond all that, just a straight juniper, for instance, which I know Redstone does. It's beautiful and kind of like a semi-sweet mead.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like semi-sweet, resinous, beautiful. I mean, that's a great point to leap in at. Sorry, you were saying, Vicky?
No, I was just going to say that's not dissimilar from what the guy in Western Virginia that's no longer open anymore was doing with the spruce tips. It was a fairly simple mead, but it was, it was just straight up, but something different, something not the usual. Because, a lot of people do like sizers and they add all the typical spices. But to branch out into something you wouldn't think of using, like basil or rosemary. I have a friend who's an absolute rosemary fiend, and he's been after me for years to create a rosemary mead, and the one attempt that I made was so disastrously bad that I've been afraid to do it again. And I probably could now, this was many years ago. I could probably do it now knowing what I know, but it was such a bad experience. I mean, you couldn't even cook with it. It was that bad.
Well, I made a sage mead some time ago. I blame it on Spelljammer and their sage course. Yeah. But I actually fermented on the fresh sage leaves, and it came out really, really strong, but it's very gradually mellowing into something that I think will be quite tasty eventually.
Oof. Yes, I mean, sage is so earthy and skunky. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, you know,
I
skunky
bet
is
it will
not.
be good.
It's skunky is actually not even